over 670 gatherings across this country and in other countries of the world, standing together, supporting each other, hearing each other's concerns, and dedicating ourselves to keeping up this fight with dedication, awareness, and with purpose. It's not that Falmouth Mile Run, it's not the Falmouth Road Race, it's not the Cape Cod Marathon. This is the big one.
Yes!
And we have to run it together. Today's gathering was put together by concerned citizens. Each of us has a voice, and we need to use that collectively and individually. Just want to tell you what's going to transpire here. We have three speakers. We have three speakers to begin with, followed by Congressman Bill Keating. First up will be Phil Duffy of the Woods Hole Research Center, followed by Jarita Davis representing Engaged Falmouth, and our Falmouth Select Woman, Democratic Town Committee Chair Megan English Braga, again followed by Congressman Keating. And we'll conclude with song. So first we'll call Grant Walker to introduce.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here with you all. Can you hear me okay? I'm inspired. And I'm here today to introduce Dr. Phil Duffy of the Woods Hole Research Center. Dr. Duffy has direct experience with the Paris negotiations and then the follow-up discussions that took place in Morocco. He might tell you about some of that. Let me just read you a little bit about Dr. Duffy. All right, I'm going to try to be a little louder. Dr. Duffy is a physicist dedicated to the use of science to address the urgent societal challenge of climate change. Before joining the Woods Hole Research Center, Dr. Duffy served in the White House as a senior advisor to the United States Global Change Research Program and as a senior policy advisor in the Office of Science and Technology Policy. Did you hear that word, science? Previously, he was chief scientist for Climate Central, an organization dedicated to increasing public awareness of climate change. Dr. Duffy has held positions at the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, the Carnegie Institution for Science, and the Woods Institute for the Environment at Stanford University. He holds a PhD in applied physics from Stanford University. So I give you Dr. Philip Duffy of the Woods Hole Research Center.
Thank you. You know, I have to say, I never thought that I would hear a crowd chanting, "Science! Science!
Science! Science! Science! Science! Science! Science! Science!
Thank you. You know, it's wonderful to see so many of you here today. And if there's one good thing about what happened yesterday, which I can't bring myself to say the name, but if there's one good thing about what happened yesterday, it's that it's motivated so many folks like you to come out and get involved. And democracy only works if the citizens are involved.
Yes!
So thank you. And don't stop. Remember, today is only the beginning. So I'd like to start by giving a special welcome and thank you to my former boss in the White House, John Holdren, who's here somewhere today. John's just returned to Falmouth, and I mean just returned to Falmouth after 8 years as the President's science advisor. And in that role, John had a lot to do with everything that the Obama administration did to fight climate change. So John, wherever you are, thank you. Thank you and welcome back to Falmouth. And there's one principle that underlined and informed everything that John and I did together in Washington and everything that we do at Woods Hole Research Center, and one principle that I value personally above all others. And that's the idea that policy should be based on facts, on a process of gathering information, assessing that information, testing hypotheses, and coming to conclusions. In other words, policy should be based on science. And remember, science is, after all, science is a process more than it's a body of knowledge. And it's extraordinary that I should feel the need to stand here today and defend the idea that policy should be based on science. Science has been so fundamental to human progress for so long. The cars that we drive, the phones in your pocket, the medications that we take to maintain our health, all of these things are the products of science. To reject science is to reject rational thought. And rational thought is what stands between us and chaos. 2 days ago, I heard Scott Pruitt, who's probably going to head our Environmental Protection Agency. I heard Scott Pruitt call for continued debate about the human role in climate change. And that may sound reasonable, but it's actually a rejection of science. And it's a rejection of science because it's been known for 20 years that humans are causing climate change. We don't need more debate about that. We need action. To set the record straight, the latest report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says that essentially all of recent global warming has been caused by humans. All of it. All of global warming has been caused by humans. And that conclusion was arrived at by thousands of scientists. And not only that, that conclusion was endorsed unanimously by 195 countries. And if that's not consensus, tell me what is. And if 195 countries know that humans are causing climate change, then the guy who's running our EPA should know it too. And he should formulate policy and enforce policy based on that fact. And it is a fact. Anything less than that is an abdication of the most fundamental responsibility of government, which is to provide a safe environment for its citizens to live in. Anything less than that is a moral failure. Liberals are afraid to talk about morality, but it's time to subject us and to subject future generations to the consequences of climate change. Droughts, floods, hurricanes, sea level rise, crop failure, wildfire, water scarcity. To subject all of us and future generations to those devastating consequences. For what? In order to preserve the profits of an industry that's doomed in the long run. In order to maintain in office a few politicians who are the servants of that industry. If that's not a moral failure, I don't know what is. And let me tell you something. Conservatives like to talk about the rights of the unborn. Well, what about the rights of the unborn to live in a healthy planet? The decisions that we make today affect the lives of future generations, and those future generations have no voice in those decisions. It's up to us. Okay. So what can we do? What can you do to continue to make progress on climate change when Washington is run by know-nothings? I'm going to mention 3 things. First, set an example. Do what you can do in your own life to reduce your own emissions of greenhouse gases. And that's important. And it's not important because your own greenhouse gas emissions matter on the scale of the planet. They don't. But what's important is to set an example. And your good behavior will influence others. So do what you can to be a good climate citizen. Second, get involved locally. If the federal government is not going to lead on climate change, it's going to be up to the towns and cities and states. And so let's come together and let's work together and let's do even more than we're already doing right here in Falmouth. Let's do even more to reduce our emissions of greenhouse gases and to generate renewable energy. And look, we all know that some aspects of that have been controversial in this town. But let's use this time, let's use this moment as a motivation to get together, to overcome our differences, and show that we can unite and make progress. Thirdly, contact your elected representatives. One of them is here today, Representative Bill Keating. Bill's going to address you in a few minutes. But contact your elected representatives. Do it often. Tell them that you care about climate change. And not only that, tell them that climate change influences how you vote. And if elected representatives care about one thing, it's how you vote. Okay, I want to close with one thought which is really important, and that is that right now America is very divided. It feels very divided. A lot of us are worried and a lot of us are fearful. And it's important that we don't let that result in conflict among different groups of citizens. It's important that we don't let politicians incite conflict among different groups of citizens. And I want to tell you something. Remember this. Trump voters, Trump supporters are not the enemy. Trump supporters are your fellow Americans, our fellow citizens. Trump supporters are literally, in some cases, our brothers and sisters. And they don't want anything that you and I don't want. They want freedom and they want economic opportunity, and we all deserve that. So here's how to keep America great, and America is great. Stand up for truth. Insist that policies be based on facts and science. Defend and strengthen our political institutions, especially the Constitution of the United States. And remember this, if they can take away the rights of one group, any group, that means they could take away your rights. So stand up and defend the rights of all American citizens. Thank you.
Friends, my impression is that some of you are having trouble hearing. There's a little room in the front. I would suggest, there's nothing we can do about the sound, so I would suggest that people congregate, move away from those areas. The speakers, the amp is on this side. So we'll take a minute to do that.
Speak right into the mic. Raise the mic up. Yeah, way up.
Hello, Falmouth. And our friends from neighboring towns. Women's rights are human rights. It's my honor to introduce our next speaker, my friend, neighbor, and fellow organizer, Dr. Jarita A. Davis, writer and community mobilizer. Dr. Davis is a writer who's lived in Falmouth for 10 years. She's one of several founding members of the grassroots organization Engage Falmouth. More information here and online. Dr. Davis graduated from Brown University with a BA in Classical Literature and Languages and from the University of Louisiana at Lafayette with an MA and PhD in Creative Writing. She's served as a science editor for 14 years. Dr. Davis has a long history of active involvement in promoting adult literacy, teaching English as a second language, and leading poetry education programs for all ages. She's also served as a trustee on the boards of arts councils and libraries in her community. And without further ado, Jarita Davis. Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. This is a beautiful crowd. Good afternoon. Okay, I heard some of you, and I know you don't have mics back there, but if we can all speak up louder. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Yeah, that's beautiful. That's powerful. You see what happens when we all put our voices together? We're louder together. We can be heard together. We're more powerful together, and we will be heard. My name is Jarita Davis. I'm one of the founding members of Engage Falmouth, which is a grassroots community organization. And we started with just a couple of friends, 6 of us sitting around a kitchen table. I'm sure, just like you, a lot of people after the election came around and sat together and said, what are we going to do? What can we possibly do? There are so many things at risk. There are women's rights that are at risk. There's race hate crimes are on the rise. To say that Black Lives Matter is to call yourself a terrorist. People say I'm a terrorist when I say that my life matters. Do you see how crazy that is? And the American way is not supposed to be a way of hatred. It's inclusive. It's supposed to be inclusive. It's supposed to be about love. And even our very planet, the very green earth that we walk upon, is spiraling into a faster and faster trend towards climate change. And something needs to be done. Literally, the entire world needs to be saved. So what can we do? What can any one person do? We can't wait for a superhero. This is kind of a Superman situation, but we don't have time for a superhero. So, and none of us here are individual superheroes. So we all have to work together and do something individually, because it takes all of our united individual efforts combined to really actually make change. So I have a few suggestions. Number 1, contact your elected representatives. I paused for effect. That wasn't me. You could, okay. It's like, All right, number 1, wait for it. Okay, contact your elected officials, okay? Make sure you press them to stand up for what's right, to take the tough stand, to not give when it's important. I have Bill Keating, Elizabeth Warren, I have Charlie Baker, I have Ed Markey. All of their phone numbers are in my phone. They're programmed in my phone. And you can all do that too. I call them often, and so should you. So make sure you call them so that they're addressing the issues that are important to us. Number 2, when they do stand up for what's right, call them again, thank them, express your gratitude, say, please continue to stand. These things are important to me, and this is how I'm voting. They need to hear that so they can go back and talk to their colleagues and say, listen, I have hundreds of constituents. who want me to speak louder about these issues. Hundreds. And that gives them more power to argue when they're in Congress or before the Senate. So now some of you are thinking, oh yes, but we live in Massachusetts. It's such a liberal state. We're so lucky to be in this blue bubble. It doesn't really matter. We have Elizabeth Warren. She does everything. And, you know, who cares? I wish I lived in Ohio where I could do something that mattered, where I could really make a difference. I know some of you have said this because I've heard some of you say this. I wish I lived somewhere where I could make a difference. But do you hear that? I wish I could make a difference. Right here in Massachusetts, we can make a difference. Right here, not just Falmouth, all over the Cape. I see you, Martha's Vineyard. I'm so glad you're here with us. It's fantastic. Listen, things are happening in our own communities, in our own neighborhoods. So here, in the state of Massachusetts, where opioid addiction is at an all-time high, where heroin overdoses, there's an epidemic of heroin overdoses that are killing people. And what does Charlie Baker do? He cuts funding for treatment of addiction. That's here in Massachusetts. Here in our beautiful, progressive, wonderful blue state of Massachusetts, we have the Plymouth nuclear power plant, right? It's leaking, it's dangerous, it's going to affect all of us personally, immediately. That's happening in our state. We need to speak up about that. A third example, in this perfect liberal bubble that we live in, where nothing bad ever happens to us because we're not in a red state, we have, at current count, at least 2 sheriffs, one in Bristol County, one in Plymouth, who have, oh, you know where I'm going with this, right? Who have offered to lease, that's right, that's the words they're using, lease their inmates to build the wall that Trump keeps talking about along the Mexican border. This is in the state of Massachusetts. Do you hear me? What can we do to make a difference? Which brings me to my third point. Act locally, be active in your community. And so Engage Falmouth, which is just a grassroots effort, but we have set up a volunteer fair that's going to happen next Sunday, which is January 29th from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. right there at St. Barnabas Church. And there'll be tables set up with different organizations, nonprofits that need your help here locally in your community. It's set up like a college fair. We have almost 25 so far. And if you're good with your hands, then sign up with Habitat for Humanity. If you love kids, if you're good with children, Big Brothers Big Sisters needs you. We have environmental issues. We have women's rights. We're trying to get as many issues as you can. So use your unique talents and skills, whatever they might be. Obviously, donate money if you have it, donate your time, donate your skills, but definitely come out and be active in your community. This is your chance to do it. So please come on out. Now, there will be live music and there will also be snacks. So. Because, no, the music and the snacks are important because we should have fun doing this. While we're doing good, it should be a good time. And also, we'll be amongst friends. We're all friends here now, right? We are all in this together. And my main reason for coming here today was not to make a statement to the media, was not to have a show out that everyone would see, from their televisions. And my purpose here was not even to protest a certain elected leader who was sworn into office yesterday. That's not why I came here today. I came here to meet all of you because this is the beginning, right? And I want to know who our partners are. Okay, we're all partners now. And before you leave, meet some more people, introduce yourself. We're going to be seeing a lot of each other, okay? We're going to be working together. I'm working with those women over there in Martha's Vineyard. We're already texting each other. Reach out to each other. As a group, we can do so much more. So I just want to say, get together and let's get to work, everybody.
Thank you, Jarita. Can you hear now? Yes. All right. If you read yesterday's Falmouth Enterprise, as I did, you would have seen that there are over 34 open positions on committees in our town. So if you're looking for a way to engage locally, that's one of them. Next speaker is Megan English Braga, someone who has stepped forward to engage in our town. Attorney English Braga focuses on criminal defense, juvenile law, domestic relations, civil litigation, and estate planning. She previously volunteered as a legal advocate for the Boston Area Rape Crisis Center and conducted research and writing for the International Law Association's comment on Articles 15 and 16 of the United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Ms. English Braga holds a bachelor's degree in international relations from Wellesley College, a master's degree from Harvard University Graduate School of Education, and a JD from Suffolk University Law School. Before studying law, Ms. English Braga worked as a classroom teacher and after-school programs coordinator and a special needs advocate at the primary as well as secondary school level. She also worked for the care and protection of orphaned and institutionalized children in Romania. As a student support counselor in the Boston Public Schools, she collaborated with Mass General Hospital and Harvard University to promote positive development and implement intervention services for low-income students and their families. Ms. English Braga is a member of the Falmouth Board of Selectmen and is chair of the Falmouth Democratic Town Committee. She is the mother of a 13-year-old boy and a 15-month-old girl. We welcome you, Megan, and thank you for your service.
Thank you. Hopefully I'll be loud enough. I come from a very loud family, so I'm usually told I'm too loud, so this is going to be my day. All right, I'm going to be. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
You want me to put it right? All right.
Put it right up against your mouth. Real close.
Okay.
There you go.
How about that? Tell it. All right. It's wonderful to see so many new faces and also really familiar faces of folks that are part of our community. Thank you so much for coming out today. It matters. I know that we're here to make connections, but it matters that we're here to make a statement by just having our bodies in this space and being together. So thank you. I'm honored to be here today to share the stage with all of the speakers and to share this moment with all of you. I grew up here in this town. I live here. I raised my two beautiful children here, and I am on the Board of Selectmen. But I'm here today not to talk in that capacity. I'm here to talk and I think raise what I believe are two significant issues of importance as we try to affect change in this community and beyond. First, I want to say what I think needs to be said, particularly in our demographic in our town, which is that people of privilege need to do our own work before we ask anyone else to do theirs. We need to critically unpack our own bias and our own prejudice to understand the ways in which we have benefited from that privilege and to truly examine how institutionalized inequality impacts those who are differently situated. Let me be clear, it's not the role of people of color or our brothers and sisters in the LGBTQ community or our family and friends who are struggling with the challenges of physical disability or mental illness, or those men and women who are struggling in poverty. It's not their job to educate people of privilege about the barriers or roadblocks they have encountered in their fight for equal rights. It's incumbent upon those of us who have been afforded benefits of privilege to do that work. And certainly, privilege is a complicated word. We can have privilege in certain ways and face discrimination and bias in others. All of our identities are wonderfully complex and beautifully complicated. But we each need to examine the ways in which we benefit from a system that was built and continues to rely upon racial, economic, and gender inequality. I think we can safely say that we can learn from the last election cycle that those deep-seated biases and prejudices played a role in the way many people voted. I encourage each one of us to really do that self-examination. Good intentions are a start, but when they're shaped by prejudice and bias, they can often yield unintended results. There's certainly no denying that all of us gathered here today, most of the people in our town and in our country, are good, compassionate, kind, and caring people. But the insidious thing about bias is that it finds a way to distort what needs to be done and distort our response to the things we see around us. So white folks, straight folks, rich folks, able-bodied folks, folks who have the privilege to be born here in this country, our brothers, any one of us lucky enough to come from a place of privilege, whatever that privilege may be, it's our job to do the work of educating ourselves. If we don't do that work, we can't expect that anybody else is going to have done theirs. I usually don't like to read, but I've said this before. I have well, she's 16 months old now, so we sleep about an hour in our house, so I don't trust myself with my memory anymore, so forgive me for having to have written notes in front of me. My second point is to focus on the reason why this rally is a nonpartisan event. And really that's because the challenges that we face at this point in time in our country aren't political. They're about questions of humanity. Unfortunately, what's happened is we have allowed questions of humanity to be entangled into questions of politics. This election showed us that we've had a true breakdown of the ability to communicate with individuals who don't think precisely like us. We have become a country where it's an us versus them, and where the ability for civil discourse about matters that we disagree upon has nearly disappeared. We need to find a way to de-other the other. I'm going to face this way because I've been really rude. We need to understand that human experience is what drives the views that people have, what drives them to cast their votes. And fundamentally underneath that vote is a human being. And certainly there are individuals and there are groups who are not worthy of our energy or our time because their bias is so deeply entrenched and so driven by hate. But the majority of individuals are worthy of a conversation. They are worthy of being asked, what is it you fear? Why are you afraid? They are worthy of being told, we understand why you might see things that way. Even if we disagree, we will listen to you if you will listen to us. Dr. King once said, nothing in the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. We need to fight that sincere ignorance and conscious stupidity through self-examination and dialogue. For any action to be successful, for any movement to be successful, we need numbers. We need momentum. We need people who are working hard every day to combat discrimination and institutionalized inequality. This gathering today and all the gatherings across the country and across the world are a wonderful start. They're an inspiring start. But we need to magnify these numbers 1,000-fold. And that only happens if we reach out to those human beings we know have a goodness and a kindness at their core, but may be driven by fear or anxiety or a lack of knowledge. When we engage in dialogue, there is a potential for change. It's perhaps the hardest work of all, but it's necessary for true and lasting change to be possible. Feminist and anti-slavery activist Frances Wright once proclaimed, "Equality is the soul of liberty. There is, in fact, no liberty without it." And let's not doubt for one moment that there are real dangers to our liberty right now. As the mother of a young man of color and a very young girl of color, there are times when that fear can almost paralyze you. But then, in those moments, I have to recall that Sorry. That's what happens when you talk about your kids. You have to recall that we've been here before. We've marched before, we've mobilized before, we've stood in the face of discrimination and injustice, we've stood side by side with our allies, and we've made change. We're not reinventing the wheel, we're just getting back on the bus. There's a saying that all the political is personal, meaning that whatever happens at the political level affects each and every one of us as individuals. But the beautiful thing is that it goes the other way too. All the personal is political. Each act that we do is an act of political resistance, of political activism. And what I'm challenging each of us to do going forward is every day in our personal lives, let us do the work, let us engage in the reflection, let us have the conversations, and let us impact the political. Thank you. And I have the distinct pleasure of introducing Congressman Bill Keating. I don't think I need to tell many of you, but I will, that Congressman Keating has been really a tireless public servant, and he's been fighting the good fight for all of us. For him to be here today, of all the places that he could be, says something about what his priorities are. It is not without political risk for a politician to attend an event like this. He has a big district. It's not all as blue as the group of people here. So it means a lot to us that you're here today, and it means a lot to us that you are continuing to work in the way that you are for climate change, for the rights of all of our citizens, for dignity and equality. So thank you for coming. Welcome.
Thank you, Megan. Thank all of you for being here. This is the great place to be today here in Falmouth and in this region. It's a remarkable community. It's a community with great leaders, with diverse opinions, and I know very vocal opinions. And it's a community that works well. When we have events like this, we've been to vigils, we have been walking through, whether it's domestic violence or gun violence. This is a town that cares and shows that it's active. And I must say too, at almost all of these, Chief Dunn is always here, participating himself. We have great solidarity here in this community, and great respect for the people that represent us in this community. And it's a pleasure, and I couldn't think of a better place to be this morning. As I walked through the crowd, people said to me, "Congressman, we need you. Congressman, we need you." Well, you have me. You have me. But I need you. And the real truth of the matter is, we need each other. We need each other. Because this is how we're going to continue to succeed in this country. This is how we're going to continue to come together. But it's not lost on me that the impetus for today around the country, whether it's in Washington or New York, or the second largest event in Boston, or whether it's events here in the Cape, in Nantucket, or in Provincetown, or Harwich, all had events today. A lot of the impetus for this came from women. This was the day of the Women's March. And I'm glad to see so many men in the audience as well, because we all know one thing. We all know one thing. If it wasn't for women, we wouldn't be here. And I must say, it's great to be here with my wife, Tevis, who's my partner in life and works with me so hard on so many of the things we work on together. Women have a great influence on my life, as they have on so many of our lives. Our daughter is a person that dedicates her profession to helping women that are victims of sexual assault and domestic violence, and helps children that are victims and their families that are victims of physical and sexual violence as well. And these things run strong in our family, as they have in so many of yours. But I also know another woman that influenced me greatly was my mother, who took a cause. She wasn't, Rosie the Riveter, but even in the times of war in our country, she joined and worked and helped in the effort as well, came to the cause of public service as well as bringing up our family. And my grandmother, who came to this country and taught me a very important lesson, and it's one of the themes of today. When I was very young, she told me the story how they had come over from another country, they had another religion than the majority party of that community at the time, and they worked hard. She brought up 8 children. There was never an empty plate there, even during the tough times, for anyone in the neighborhood to join them. She sacrificed a son who was killed in action, defending our country. And she told me a story that after all that, they had finally had enough money to save up and buy the home that they were renting in. A lifelong goal, to buy and own your own home. And she told me just as they had the money to do that and they were about to go forward, people in the neighborhood got together and decided they didn't want someone from another country, they didn't want someone of another religion to own that home in their neighborhood. And they were meeting together to try and stop that from happening, to pull their money up to buy that house out from underneath them. And she told me this story, and she told me how she worked hard and they went forward and they owned that home. And they bought that home. But that wasn't the only reason she was telling me the story, because she told me that same group, years later in that same neighborhood, when there was a Jewish group getting together to build a temple in that same neighborhood, that same group got together. And I don't know how they made a mistake like this, but they made a mistake of calling up my grandmother. And in her Irish brogue, she shot back at them and said, "Now, this wouldn't be the same kind of meeting you were having about me, would it?" She told me that story. She taught me that lesson. When you discriminate against anybody, you discriminate against everybody. And today, there are many issues that we're concerned about and gather about. One of them deals with the fact that in healthcare, there's a repeal that's already underway to make sure that based on your gender, you can be charged different amounts of money on your health insurance. The ACA prohibits that from happening, and they want to take that away. They want to take away things that inordinately hurt women as well when it comes to decisions about their own health choice. They want to make choices that are going to affect disproportionately women who are our senior citizens, who are trying to make ends meet by charging them out of pocket more than they're paying now because of the repeal of the Affordable Care Act, over $1,000 a year. Remember what Obama said, though: don't boo, vote. Don't boo, organize. And that's what today is about. But we're all affected by something as fundamental as the repeal of the Affordable Care Act. You know, I had people come to me in my office. I had a woman who came to me, her name was Dana, first name, and she told me as a newlywed, just months after being married, she and her husband got some devastating news that he had a terminal illness, and his lifespan, the prognosis was just months. And she had insurance from her employer, but she had an alternative with the Affordable Care Act for another insurance policy, so she wasn't paying hundreds of thousands of dollars a month just to keep her husband alive. And for a great period of time, years, they were able to afford to have some time to share time together, to love each other, and to move forward because of the Affordable Care Act. And it's not just about women as well. I had a young man who was going into college, Corey, and Corey told me how he wasn't going to pay for any health care because he didn't think he needed it. He was healthy, but he was under 26, going to college, and his parents, his mother and father, decided to keep him on their health care. And he had a wellness check as a result of it. And he found out that he had testicular cancer because of that wellness check. And he had the insurance and health care to pay for that treatment, and he is cured of that now and wants to make sure that is there for everyone else. And there was a great article, you people might have seen it in the Times, the Cape Cod Times, by Dr. Amy Gardner, talking about the Affordable Care Act. She wrote that she came to this area because this type of health care was available so that she could treat the patients she wanted to treat. And she talked about the uniqueness of the Cape Cod area and the islands area as well, in terms of why that's important. She talked about the fact that, as we know, many people here that live here year-round, because of the seasonal nature of things here, we have to stitch together 2 and 3 jobs just to get by. And when that happens, you usually don't get health insurance from the companies that you work for. But because of the Affordable Care Act, that is there, and that's available to people right here, so they can afford to stay here and live here and prosper here. And that's important right here in this region. And she wrote about something else that I know from being a district attorney before I had this job. And that's seeing the tragedy in a very concrete way. A tragedy that my family's experienced as we lost a family member. With treating the terrible, terrible disease of opioid addiction. She talked in that article, she wrote in that article how it was that kind of option that's there for medical care that's required, and before that was absent in over 70% of health insurance policies. That is now there and required under the Affordable Care Act, so that the people and families dealing with this terrible disease have a medical option to get the kind of behavioral health treatment that they need. These things are all so important to us in our lives. You know, you look at what's going on and you say, well, we know we're on the right track. Are we on the right track about the Affordable Care Act? Are we on the right track about dealing with the issues of opioid addiction? Are we on the right track about equal justice and equality and no discrimination for people? Yes. Well, there's a thing we learned in the last election. Even if you're on the right track, you can get run over if you just sit there. Now, are we on the right track? Yes! Are we going to just sit there? No! That's why we're here. That's why we're in solidarity. That's why we need each other, so that we can truly be one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.